Hi, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name's Laura, and I would like to go straight on and introduce Cynthia. Cynthia Bampton is co-founder of the Awaken Life Project with her husband, Peter Bampton. Cynthia is my teacher, and I've known her for over 10 years now. And I'm continually amazed at her ability to express very deep spiritual truth in a way that we can really understand and make accessible and make it real in our own lives. And so this is why I love doing these webinars, because I really believe Cynthia has this gift to bring to everybody. Cynthia will now do a presentation, and then there'll be a chance to ask questions. And I really, really encourage you to ask a question or share something if you have the impulse to do so. Don't hold back, don't be shy. Having an opportunity to interact with Cynthia about whatever's going on for you is a really golden opportunity. So if you feel the impulse, then definitely put your hand up. And also, I'd just like to tell you that for the past nearly 3 weeks, Cynthia's been on retreat. Oh, 6 weeks. It's been 6 weeks. And yes, something really extraordinary is happening. And we had a group with Cynthia over a week ago, and it's simply amazing to be with her at the moment. So this is a special time. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Cynthia.
Hey, good evening. Can everybody hear me? It's a little overwhelming seeing so many people all at one time. Feels like you're in my living room with me. Let's just start off with a short meditation. So if everybody can just sit up straight. Just take a moment to breathe. Taking a deep breath in and exhaling as you relax. And enjoy the process of breathing. Bring your attention to the breath for just a few minutes. Just have a very relaxed attention. You're not trying to do anything. You're not trying to create anything. You're not trying to have a particular experience. You are not doing anything. You may be aware of the movement of mind. The arising of thought. The feeling of sensation. And all of that is occurring without you doing anything. As you sit in meditation and you are aware of the arising of thought, the feeling of sensation, maybe anxiety, maybe bliss. Recognize it's all content arising within your awareness. It is not arising within the body. It is not restricted to the body. You are not restricted to the body. You are not the content of your experience. Recognize that you are aware. Of all sensation, of thought, feeling. If you can say, I think, if you can say, I feel, then you are not what you're thinking. You are not what you're feeling. You are that which is aware. And the content you identify usually as yourself is just the arising of different modifications of consciousness that's in your awareness. So why is this important? Because habitually, human beings are convinced that thoughts that are arising is who they are. Feelings that are arising is who you are. You are not limited in a very small way. You are actually that which is aware, that which is prior to all experience. So maybe you find your attention automatically goes to a thought and it contracts. Or you notice your attention drifts to another object that's arising in your awareness. So it's not a problem. Just gently allow your awareness to relax and the contraction to release. Recognize that you decide where you put your attention. You are not a victim to your mind. At any time, you can choose where you put your attention. You can put your attention on your beating heart right now. You can shift your attention to the breath right now. So be the witness of the play of consciousness. It's all a play, whether you find it pleasant or unpleasant. We are very conditioned to decide this is good, this is bad, this is pleasant, this is unpleasant. But if you recognize you are that which is aware, that which is witnessing the modifications of consciousness, you will find liberation. You will find space. You will find home. So just take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, feel the breath leaving the body. And do this a couple more times. And be aware of the sensation of the body as the body is being breathed. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay. So there's a few new people on tonight. And there's quite a few regulars, so it's very nice to see everyone. As Laura said, I've been on retreat for quite a while. And then when this webinar is over, I'll go back on retreat. So the topic of the webinar tonight is radical responsibility. I always find it interesting because these titles are chosen, months before. And then I have to look and see what I'm supposed to talk about. But it always kind of amazes me that what I'm supposed to talk about is pretty relevant to what I should be talking about. So it's kind of like magic, as everything else. So there's different ways to talk about this radical responsibility. And one way to talk about it is to actually look and see what conditional responsibility is. Because most people are practicing conditional responsibility, not necessarily radical responsibility. So conditional responsibility is basically being a conditioned human being and responding from that condition. So for example, we're all conditioned to be good people. We're all conditioned to be good daughters, good sons, good husbands, good wives. We're all conditioned to do the right thing, to maintain the status quo, to be nice people. Some of us try to be alternative, and we might be a little bit different than some people, but the conditioning runs very, very deep. So the conditioned responsibility that we take is usually from the perspective of ego. And the perspective of ego that I'm talking about is a presumption and an insistence on separation. So it doesn't mean when I say that conditioned responsibility is usually from a perspective of ego. It's not a criticism toward anyone. It's just basically the truth. A lot of us can have spiritual experiences and go very deep. And yet, we have to be very, very humble on how conditioned we actually are. And usually we don't even know. We don't even notice because we're so habitually convinced that we're separate human beings, that we are what we think and we are what we feel, that we're conditioned by our history, by our personal history, by our collective history. We live in a world of shoulds. I should be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that. And this can show up. If you just stop and you slow down a little bit, you'll start to see how much stress and anxiety that you're actually living under almost all the time because of this presumption of separation. So intuitively, maybe all human beings, but I would say all the people on this webinar tonight, you intuit that there's something else that's prior to the conditioned experience and the stressful experience, the anxiety experience. Maybe you've had experiences in nature or on retreats, but there's an intuition that there's something prior to your ongoing human experience. So then you start to seek for that. You want to wake up to something that's prior to the stress of the human life. You're conditioned to think that there's a utopia somewhere on the horizon where everything is always beautiful and always peaceful. So there's an anxiety in the seeking. There's stress in being a human being. Because we have this idea of utopia, we think that we should never experience stress or anxiety. But stress and anxiety are part of the awakening process. So they're not something to avoid. It's something to embrace. It's something to understand. And it's in that non-avoidance and in that embrace of wanting to liberate yourself from the belief that you're separate, isolated, and alone. That's where you start practicing radical responsibility. So radical responsibility is to live the truth of prior unity, to live beyond the presumption of the separate self, to question everything instead of blindly going along with whatever narrative is in style in any given moment. Question, who am I? Who am I really? Why am I here? What am I doing? Why am I seeking? What is it that I'm seeking for? What is a thought? Am I a thought? Where does thought go? When I shift my attention to something else, it disappears. Where does it go? Radical responsibility is when you're more interested in transcending degenerative egoic patterns, and you're more interested in living regenerative, divine patterns. It's where you decide that you want to put God first. You want to put God before sex, before your attachment to food, before your attachment to living a conventional life. of being a conventional ego. It's being interested in not allowing yourself to be constantly distracted by degenerative egoic patterns. We are constantly distracted. If you look at your own experience, you will be able to see this. When things get intense, what do? We turn away, we get busy, we start cleaning things, we start eating, we look for a relationship. We just want to distract ourselves away from the intensity of God realization. Of realization of your true self. We are expert distractors. You just have to look. And usually we want to distract ourselves when things get too intense. It's those moments of intensity are the moments of awakening. And if you understand that and you want to wake up, then you will do the practice of not distracting yourself away from whatever is happening in your experience at any given moment. Radical responsibility is pointing the finger here, saying, what is going on with this right here, right now? What reaction am I having? Opposed to turning the finger outward and blaming someone else, or blaming the past, or blaming a thought, or blaming whatever it is for the intense experience you might be having in any given moment. But when there's intensity and you ask questions, you lean in, that's when you're practicing radical responsibility. When you deny the movement to conventional responsibility, that's practicing radical responsibility. And why is it radical? Because hardly anybody's doing it. But we all have the capacity to do it. There's going to be fear because you're doing something new. You're breaking out of the chains of the presumption of the separate sense of self. You're breaking out of the identity of who you think you actually are. So right now, everybody knows who they are. You're so-and-so from a certain place. You have a certain history. You've got certain problems you need to get over before you can be a liberated human being. And as long as you're trying to get over yourself, you're practicing conventional responsibility. You're not practicing radical responsibility because you're still in the mode of seeking. You're still trying to improve a separate sense of self that actually doesn't exist until you create it in your own mind by putting your attention on it. If you put your attention on who you think you are from a conventional point of view, you are distracting yourself from who you really are. I'm not talking about bypassing anything. Everybody's worried about bypassing their ego, but it's not true. The worrying about bypassing the ego is a big excuse not to take your attention off the seeking process. So every person here on the screen is already free, already prior to the human experience. And you are also incarnated into a body-mind, and you're having a human experience. So it's a paradox, and both exist. You're always already free, and there's a practice that needs to be done, a practice of radical responsibility, so that you can actually understand this and see this for yourself. Everybody has to do the work for themselves. But just speaking from my own experience, when you take your attention off the distractions of the world and the separate self, you are resting. You could say in God's hands. You have all the help you need. You have all the courage you need. But usually, when intensity occurs, we turn away from that help. We turn away from God's hands, and we go back into the world of seeking. We go back into the world of identification with our history, with all our problems. And for a little while, you think you've distracted yourself away from intensity, but you find that you suffer. And then you start to seek again. And then somewhere you shift. And you don't distract yourself, and you get in touch again with your heart. And it's not your personal heart, it's your spiritual heart. It's divine, it's sacred, it's God. It's you. But you're not used to being you. I'm not used to being me. But I'm getting more used to it. There's a point that you have to find and give yourself to the attraction of the heart. You wouldn't be on this webinar if you didn't have an attraction, a natural attraction to something prior to your human experience, something greater than what you already experience. So when you feel intensity, just keep your attention on that attraction. And maybe you don't even feel that attraction in the moment of intensity. So sometimes all you can do is remember that it's there and put your attention on that, whatever it takes. And if you do it, it's very, very simple. If you do it, you will liberate yourself from this cycle of ego, the cycle of conventional responsibility, which is really not taking responsibility for anything, just going along with the narrative. So we're in a time right now in history where it's important that more people wake up to this radical responsibility, where more people are willing to stand up, to not go along with any fear that you might be feeling, or any imposition of ideas that you're putting on yourself or other people are putting on you. If you practice radical responsibility of putting your attention on the divine, you will understand that which you could never understand from the position of conventional responsibility. And your whole point of view of what it is to be a human being incarnated will change. And you will start to have real relationships based on love, not based on fear, not based on ideas about what it's supposed to look like, based on freedom, based on love. And some of those relationships will be sexual relationships, but the love that I'm talking about is not limited to those relationships. It's not limited to sexuality. So where do you find the courage to radically transform the life you're living and the relationships you have? You find the courage by putting your attention on the attraction of freedom, the attraction of real relationship, the attraction of love, not romantic love, but love. Whatever it is for you, that's where you put your attention. And that which brought you on this webinar tonight is not your ego. So something is already alive in every single person on this call. So feel it for yourself. And that's where you keep your attention. That's what it means for radical responsibility. And then when you feel intensity, you don't move. You keep your attention there. When you feel fear, you don't move. You keep your attention there. You start to become interested. Maybe you want to read more about this. Maybe you want to be with like-minded people. We can't fool ourselves on how conditioned we actually are, so there is effort involved. But it's not bad. But you just have to understand that in order to be yourself and to be the love that you probably intuit that you already are, you have to be willing to do the work. You have to be willing to take you need to be willing to be in the process of purification. You need to be willing to feel the heat. If you stay in the heat, it will turn to light. But you can't jump into the light unless you're willing to feel the heat. And feeling the heat is alive. Avoiding the heat is not. Feeling the heat is radical responsibility. Avoiding the heat is ego. It's really that simple. And nobody knows how to do this. It's just moment to moment, you turn your attention to the longing that's alive in you already. It's moment to moment. So don't look for the big explosive experience that's going to do it for you. If you have that, fantastic. But it's not about experience. No experience is going to do it for you. It's moment to moment. So with radical responsibility comes radical understanding of what's true and what's real. And then we need to live it moment to moment, moment to moment, and moment to moment. And that can sound very arduous from the perspective of ego. But why wouldn't you want to be alive and practice radical responsibility moment to moment? Why wouldn't you want to do that? Because we're not wired to think that way. So you have to recognize we are wired completely differently than what I'm talking about. So we all have to be willing to do the work. It's all in your own experience. All you have to do is slow down and look, learn, understand, and not distract yourself from the divine impulse that's already alive in you. Don't give it up for just some fleeting pleasure. Don't give it up to just get away from intensity. Don't give it up because you want to be nice. Don't give it up for anything. And it can be very, very practical. I was listening to a call of one of our groups, women's groups today, and someone gave the example if she was just working with some brooms here at the Quinta, and she was getting frustrated because she kept, I don't know what she was doing, but she was knocking them down, or they weren't doing what the brooms were supposed to be doing, and she could feel the intensity and the anxiety, arising, where you could get, everybody's been in that situation where it's just not going the way that you want it to go, and you're just starting to feel a lot of tension, anxiety. And all she did was turn her attention. And then everything went well, and there was space. So it's very practical. When you're in relationship and you start to feel that anxiety of, why doesn't he love me? Why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he do that? Why doesn't she do this? Why doesn't she do that? And you start getting angry. In that moment, bring your attention back to your heart, back to the divine, back to the truth, whatever that is, and see what happens. So this is very practical, and you're not trying to have any kind of spiritual experience. It doesn't matter what kind of spiritual experience you have. It only matters that you do the practice moment to moment. Sometimes we talk about this practice as saying, letting everything be as it is. So for those of you that are part of our Sangha who are listening, it's not different. But right now, the way I'm speaking about it is what's alive for me and what I want to share with you. So I don't want you to be confused, but sometimes it's good to hear something in a different way. Okay, so why don't we just take a minute to just sit quietly for a minute or two, and then I can take some questions. Okay, when you're ready, just open your eyes. Okay. So I think it's probably going to be more beneficial to everyone if you have a question or a comment, that you make it very implicating about what I just spoke about. And maybe a good way to even look at, if you feel like you don't have a question or you're not really sure, you can just go to your own experience right now and see what's being stirred up. Maybe you feel very at peace. Maybe you feel a lot of space. Maybe you feel anxiety. Maybe you feel fear. Maybe you feel agitation. Maybe you feel all those things coming and going. Okay, it's really important that we make it real so that everybody can go as deep and as far as they want to go. So don't worry about being deep and spiritual. We know what that is.
Teresa.
Teresa. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Cynthia.
It's good to see you again.
Do you hear me?
Yeah?
It's so good to see you again.
Yeah.
Do you listen to me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're cutting out a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if you listen to me.
No, I can.
Now, I would like. It's really nice to. It's really nice to be able to speak with you after all this time. I would like to share something with you, which is I feel very much what you are saying, because I have this experience which I would love to share, which is, to make it short, but for a long time, for I don't know how many years, when I meditate, or when I pray, or feel, honestly, because I never talked about it. In the beginning, I don't know how to explain. It's like it's coming from a place that I know for sure I'm home. Gives me a homely feeling. Okay, this is home. And I always felt this experience, this presence. And I was kind of looking around on the street thinking, okay, I'm crazy. And how do people don't feel it? How? And I don't know how to explain this. It's like a bliss. It's like and for a long time, it's just like I'm very peaceful and I'm connected, and I feel a presence outside of me, around me, like holding. I don't know, not holding me, but around me. I'm very, very calm. And then imagine that for the next 2 days, I'm just rushed to work and I do millions of things and I'm not connected, and that feeling disappears. So that presence or that feeling disappears. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, but it's not there, Teresa. It's not there because you shifted your attention. It is there. But now you have your intention on being busy, being at work. And it's not to say that you can't do things and be busy and be at work and still be in touch with this. But it's this, this that you're talking about is not a feeling. It's not an experience. It's your true nature. It can't go anywhere. But you distract yourself. So that's where this moment to moment, you know, bringing your attention back when you feel yourself getting lost. Because you want to be rooted in that, not just having it, you know, an experience on the street sometimes. You want to be home all the time. And you are home all the time, but you don't know it because you allow yourself to be distracted. And also, I think it would be really important, and I know you were going to come to the women's retreat with me and I had to cancel it, but I think it's important you come on a retreat and you do meditation. You do a meditation retreat with me.
Really looking forward to.
I'm thinking about doing a New Year's retreat. I usually do it, but with all the COVID situation, it wasn't going to happen. And then plus my current physical situation. So I'm thinking about it still. I have to make up my mind in the next week or so. So once I do that, we'll send something out. And if you can come.
I will go for sure, Cynthia.
Okay. I'll put you on the list. Okay, because really it's this slowing down. It's about you being alone. You know, if you're on retreat, you're with other people, but being alone, so that you can really start to see the movement of mind and you can understand it. So you don't, you know, just unconsciously become distracted, because that's what happens. It's just so habitual. And again, that's not a criticism to you. It's just that's what happens to everybody. I'm sure almost everybody on this call has gone on a retreat and you have your mind blown and you see a whole new way to live, and then you go home and you lose touch with it. So we don't want to lose touch with that which is real and true. We want to live that which is real and true. And that's why we have to be willing to do the work. So, and it's fantastic that you already have a deep, feeling sense of this bliss that you were talking about. But make that the most important thing in your life. Make that the most important thing. So maybe you just don't allow yourself to be so busy.
I'm feeling something. Cynthia.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit more now, Teresa. It's hard to follow you.
Yeah, yeah. Are you listening to me now?
Uh-huh.
Are you listening to me? I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe we can just leave. Hello. Teresa, maybe we can just leave it at that, unless you had something different. Because I think I said the most important thing to you, and that's something you can start right now.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So much, Cynthia.
Okay. It's nice to talk with you again.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So nobody should hold back, because that would be conventional irresponsibility. You see, this is the whole thing. This is radical responsibility. You don't hold back out of any kind of fear or any kind of anything, because that's the distraction. If you have your attention on, like let's say you have an impulse that you want to speak, but you also have like an experience of fear arising or insecurity or whatever it might be. You see, this is the moment you take your attention off that and you bring it to that impulse that wants to rise above. Okay, Jana?
Yeah, I have an impulse to ask you something about radical responsibility, because everything you shared makes total sense to me, but just the word responsibility, I wonder, responsibility towards whom or for whom, or is it responsibility to what I think or what I believe is true?
Well, think of responsibility as about the ability to respond. So you have a radical ability to respond to what you know in your heart is true. And since I know you, I can say that. If I didn't know you, I wouldn't say that, because people feel all sorts of things and they think it's truth, and it's really just how they feel. But I know that you know what I'm talking about. So you have the ability to respond to the divine in any given moment. And that's radical if you look at the world we live in.
Yeah, I like that definition, ability to respond. That makes everything clear.
Yeah, it's going beyond shoulds.
Yeah.
There's no shoulds in this. For example, a conventional responsibility is, oh, I scheduled this webinar. I should do this webinar no matter what. Because, people are signed up for it and da-da-da-da, so I should show up. But radical responsibility is moment to moment on this retreat. The most important thing to me was not to take my attention off the divine that I was very immersed into. And I'm not going to do that to prove to all of you that I'm conventionally responsible. That's why I wanted to send out the email, so that everybody knew there was a possibility I wouldn't come. Because I didn't know. But what I did know is that I wasn't going to be conventionally responsible. I was going to be respectful, but I wasn't going to pull myself out of a retreat to prove that I'm a responsible, good person. So that's an example. So nobody should sell themselves short. Oh, the Kinta had
Yeah, they'd like to ask a question.
It's funny because all these people at the Kinta, they're over in our meditation room, and I haven't really seen them for quite a while, so I get to talk to them now. This is kind of interesting. Okay, who is it?
Hi, Cynthia. This is Ibrahim, and
oh, hi! I don't even know you, the one I'm talking to. You were just on a retreat, and you're a friend of Jonathan and Nina's, I've heard.
Wow, I'm amazed.
I know everything, Ibrahim. You got to be careful.
How can I question that? I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and also to stay a bit longer. And also very grateful for how you've allowed us to come together this evening. It's a beautiful gathering where we can all sit and reflect and experience probably the most meaningful question in life, which is what is the nature of this life, and what is the relation of us in this life? And I also welcome a lot what you said before about questioning everything. And I feel that I wanted to be open about some questioning that's been coming up a lot lately, which is on this topic of oneness versus separation. Before I encountered the teachings of non-duality, I always had this feeling that we are not separated, but also this wish. That's kind of the world that I want to live in, where we all feel interconnected and we all care and love each other. And then at some point I came into contact with the non-duality teachings a few years ago, and it was mostly through listening to videos and reading some books. And it was beautiful, and it still is, because I really want that to be true, and I want that to be the reality that I live in, that we are all one, and that we can actually share that life from that understanding. However, now my struggle, and that's where the questioning comes from, is perhaps best explained by referring to a sentence in your meditation, which I really enjoyed and feel grateful for. I can fully experience that my experience is content arising in awareness. I can go there and I can verify that, and it feels, yeah, that's what I'm experiencing right now. However, where then the struggle comes is to say that, or take that a step further and say that awareness is the awareness with capital A.
Your awareness is what?
Awareness with capital A. So that, or putting it differently, that awareness where the content arises in is just one, and there's only one of that, and that's the same for me and for you, and we're all in it.
We're not all in it, we're all it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that is.
But I just want to tell you too, it's not an it.
I guess it's all just language, yeah.
Well, it's language, but it's sometimes we have to reach to, I'm not trying to pick apart your words, but consciousness just is, awareness just is. We choose these words and we say it and that kind of thing because we're standing in a presumption of separation, and we relate to the world from that presumption. Mm-hmm. It's so habitual. So when you think of awareness just is, and I say I am that, but the I that I'm talking about is not the small, separate self. When you recognize, you see that the middleman, the separate self that we always put in the middle disappears. And that's not something you can get with your mind. Mm-hmm. And I'm, sounds like from your background, you probably have experienced that before. Is that true?
So my experience is that I can be aware and conscious of content arising, mm-hmm. but my is not yet that where it arises in is what everything is, consciousness. And I do, and that's where my question comes now, in day-to-day sometimes have this feeling, which I think I know that indeed all that I am is consciousness, and that consciousness is what all we are, and that's all there is. However, then my struggle is that I've been told this, because when I come to sits like this, or teachings like this, then prior to my experience of that, we've been told that our nature is that one consciousness. So then I feel, and this is sincere, genuine questioning, I'm not trying to be criticizing, like I feel, have I not been conditioned to look at the world like that, to a point where I start to see the world through that lens? And how can I, because it's very subtle, is it like a really intuitive knowing, or is it because that's what I really want it to be, because I really want it to be? And so when I get these glimpses, I find it hard to discern, and then ask myself, is it important to define it as one consciousness? Can I not just rest in the idea that we all somehow interconnected, that we all somehow, because I can feel love for all the people here anywhere I go. Why do I have to choose? But to me, almost feels like believe right now that we are that one consciousness. Can I not leave it up to undefined? It's a mystery how we are feeling.
Yeah, but the thing that you have to, the way you're speaking about it, and I don't think it's just language, you're still speaking about it as if there's a separate I in the middle, having these experiences, having these doubts, having, you know, feeling love, wanting to live a certain way. And, you know, if you actually recognize, and I understand it's a very good question to say, well, if I hear teachings and all of a sudden I believe the teachings, is that my authentic experience or is that my conditioned experience? So what you're doing is you're doubting, you know, doubt arises, and maybe you have an authentic experience, but pretty soon doubt will come in and say, well, how authentic was it? And so really it comes down to the individual, and you have to continue to give yourself to this, and you need to find out for yourself. And when you actually go, when you experience something that's prior to conditioning, which means prior to the mind, you will know without a doubt that you have seen and recognized something. And then the work is not to doubt it. So I don't know how deep you've gone. I don't know what your experience has been. But you see, if you can recognize conditioning, but you also have to be willing to see if you've had an experience that's prior to any conditioning, you have to be willing to give yourself to that. It's not something you can know. It's not something you can put in your pocket and have. It's not an experience. I'm just giving words to it. But you have to find out for yourself. And it's something, once you find out for yourself, and maybe it's only a flash, but it's something that touches your heart that you don't forget. You may try to deny it because it's implicating. Because, you know, all of us want to love and be loved. But what that looks like, we all have to find out by letting go of the presumption of the separate self. So I recognize when you ask the question, I recognize that there's an authentic impulse to go beyond this conditioned world and the conditioned experience you might be having. But it also is like you have to drop, you have to take the risk to let go of all that and then to find out.
Yeah, I think you understood me very well. I really think my struggle with that is the question, have I been conditioned by the non-duality teaching itself? And
Right, but isn't that coming from your mind? Isn't it the mind that comes up and goes, well, was I conditioned from the, because if you really understand the non-duality teaching, and look, it's like, this non-duality is not something that any of us are going to get overnight. And it's not something that I don't think we can ever fully understand it. But do we have the courage to give ourselves to that not knowing? To really not know? And let everything of your conditioning shake. Because you don't know who you are.
I can admit that there's a deep longing for that to be true. I really want that to be the truth. So I should trust that and everything else.
You can have an authentic, motivation, but really it comes down to this moment-to-moment practice, because you have to find out for yourself moment to moment. And you might find out something one day, you just see something and you see I like to call it now a degenerative egoic pattern that you might find that you struggle with. And then the next, and you're liberated from that in the moment that you recognize that any experience you're having, even the authentic, even the desire to be free of all this conditioning, you see, you even have to let go of that, because consciousness just is. It doesn't have a desire to be free. You see, so we're talking about really demanding engagement with reality. And all any of us can do is be willing to put ourselves into the fire of purification moment by moment, with no guarantee of anything. And then we live. And we engage. But it's very dynamic, especially, I don't know if you've experienced this while you're at the Kinto over the last couple of days after the retreat. But it's a very dynamic thing to do in relationship with other people ongoingly. Have you found that?
Yes.
So, if that's what appeals to you, this is the interesting thing, because you can experience that and you can feel that and be drawn to it. But it's very easy to go back to conventional life. So that's where the radical responsibility comes in. How do you want to live? Not what are the conditions that you want to live in, but how do you want to live? Who do you want to live with? How do you want to be? In every moment. And that's what each person has to find out for themselves. But if you do have a longing, give yourself to that longing again and again and again, but not an idea of the longing and not figuring out anything. Just the pure moment to moment. The moment to moment bowing down to grace. And what if that's what your life was about? And maybe it is. I've had an interesting, because, I've done long retreats before, but I always knew, okay, I'm going to go on retreat for 30 days. And then I'm done. And then I'm going to go back and I'll do the things I do, and I'll take what I've learned and I'll continue to live from my deepest understanding. But the situation I'm in now with this retreat is I don't know how long it's going to last. All you guys are over there. I hear you laughing, having a good time. Retreats have happened. We've had amazing events here. And it's all happening. And I'm here, not engaging. And I don't know how long it's going to take or how long it's going to last. And it really has hit me. And the other day I realized that it's not about when I'm going to come off retreat. It's about never coming off retreat. And it doesn't mean never talking to anyone, but it's taking that position of never coming off retreat. always being engaged with this radical responsibility, no matter what. And I don't think there's anything else that any human being can do other than that. And it's not, it's not always like this woohoo spiritual experience. Sometimes it's just very practical. My dog keeps whining and he's driving me crazy. What am I going to do? Simple things. Does it make sense, Ibram?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for the answer.
When are you leaving?
Probably Friday or Saturday.
Okay, well, maybe I'll see you. Who knows?
I'd certainly welcome and embrace that. I took away that it's dropping and emptying everything, all the conditioning, including what I think non-duality is, and just being in the moment and seeing what arises there that feels genuine in my heart, and trusting that. So, and also even dropping the desire to wanting to be something like non-duality, just not having any outlook of what it be beyond what is here. That'll be my work if I understand.
Yeah, and not putting too much emphasis on how you feel. Because there's going to be times maybe you don't feel your heart. Maybe you feel no connection at all to anything divine. Then what are you going to do? So that's why you don't want to be dependent upon feeling anything in particular. You just know who you are prior to all the conditioning. You may not be resting in it. It may not be your ongoing experience, but I think you know. There's a knowing within you. And that's all you know. And sometimes you feel it and sometimes you don't. But you always know it. There was a moment in this retreat that I was feeling so much fear, intense amount of fear, and I had no connection to anything. And all I could remember, it was just a memory of like, okay, I know that I know. I had no emotional connection to it. But that's where I put my attention. And then the fear took its proper place as just another object arising in my awareness. So I just want to liberate you from any kind of expectation of feeling anything, because freedom is free. It's not dependent upon anything.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Really appreciate it.
Very nice to meet you. Albert, hi. Is everybody okay if we go a little bit over? If we go a little over time? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'll make this quick.
No, you don't have to make it quick because everybody agreed. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
if we don't get the agreement, then people start disappearing and it's a bit strange. Okay.
Yeah, so this radical responsibility I'm going to take from a different angle that I'm experiencing right now. I came to a location where I don't live to be with a best friend who probably won't be here in 2 months. But here's the thing, based on our discussion tonight, that I've really witnessed. If I may characterize this person, I would say it's a person who lived a life of conventional responsibility. But what I am witnessing with him now that he's going through all this, this end of life stuff, is that he is really transforming who he was and leaving a legacy, almost like a karmic legacy that you wouldn't have been able to attach to his conventional responsibility character. But in addition, you know, with that conventional behavior, I'm seeing also at the end of his life, his exhibiting of transcendence of his ego. It's just unfolding for me now to start witnessing, you know, this new radical, you know, radicalness in him. And I'm just thinking that, you know, here's a guy 68 and has gone through a lot, you know, this past year. And it's at the end of the life that he's almost going back to what always was in the beginning.
Mhm.
And
Well, that's always been, not just in the beginning.
that's always been. And I'm viewing this now as a radical responsibility from his perspective. He's
Well,
almost responsible for those who are remaining to live their lives in a different way.
right. So he's exhibiting, you know, he's surrendering to his situation, it sounds like.
Yeah, but in a way, he's taking a responsibility for those that are around him to maybe not do the same thing that he did.
Well, that's fine. You know, that's a way that he can give because he's sharing his experience and now maybe what he's understanding. And he wants to share that with everyone before it's, you know, because that's what he has to share. That's what he has to give at this point in his life. But that's what he's doing. He can't take responsibility for other people and their karma. But what I suggest, Albert, because he's showing you something, right?
Definitely.
And you don't need to wait to exhibit this radical responsibility in your own life. And I know you've changed a lot over the time that I've known you. So he's giving you, he's just giving, you know, he's giving you something. And hopefully he's giving you the impulse to live what he's giving you, which is in line probably with what you've already experienced somewhat in your own life already. But it's very poignant when someone is dying and waking up at the same time.
Yeah, I think I've been on my journey, and I think it's because of that that I've been able to explain to you what I see or what I've seen with him. But what I think is the miracle here, if I could use the term of radical responsibility, is how within the next, well, say within the last 6 months of his 68-year-old life, that he's being radical in terms of his responsibility to me and others, right? Because I'm not the only one who's affected by this. And yeah, a couple of things come up. You know, why wait till you die to take on this radical responsibility? I mean,
Yeah, but most people, I just want to say, most people will take on, well, not everyone, because a lot of people die without doing that. But people will only do it if they feel like they have no option. There's a tendency to let go when you're being forced to let go. You see, so we don't want to wait. This goes back to what I was saying earlier, not to wait and allow ourselves to continue to be distracted with things that are so completely unimportant. Completely unimportant, completely unnecessary. The whole the whole mode of seeking is completely unnecessary because it's based on a presumption that separation is real. Everything, everybody on this call, including myself, the time we've spent in order to try to get over something, in order to be able to express our true selves, is completely unnecessary because we're always already our true self. But we don't live it because we allow ourselves to be distracted almost continuously with things that don't matter. So this radical responsibility is no longer allowing yourself moment to moment to be distracted. And everybody's got different things that they're distracted by. But whatever anybody's thing is, you don't want to give up your capacity to be an expression of love and light in this world so that you can feel good, for example, or you can be somebody, or you can be the nice person. You can, you do things because you're afraid to look irresponsible, for example. So I'm saying, basically what I'm trying to get across is you don't want to give up your divinity for something in this world that comes and goes and has nothing to do with anything. And so what your friend, you being with your friend right now, he's probably demanding presence from you, right? And it's in that presence that he's demanding, and you meet his presence in all of its maybe awkwardness or all of its whatever it is. Maybe sometimes you don't know what to say. Maybe you want to say something that's funny, but you feel like you shouldn't because he's dying. I don't know. But you see, if you meet the presence, then you're living that radical responsibility. Because you're not concerned about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would say that the presence that exists in my being with him is, it's obviously not the bliss that we were talking about before with Teresa, but it is a divine presence that allows me to just be there. It's almost, my heart is so open that it's clearly not about me. It's
Right.
just being there.
But then you have to let go of your ideas of what bliss is, because it's okay. What you're describing is bliss in the midst of death. You see, and that's very unconventional.
Okay, I'll take that. I was going to use the word flow because it was just a flow, but I could get rid of my understanding of the word flow too. I'll junk out the whole English language. I know what I'm feeling, so to speak,
Right. But the reason why it's important to look at this word bliss when you brought it up is because we're not conditioned to even know what bliss is. We're not conditioned to know what ecstasy is, for example. We just don't do that. We don't do the ecstasy thing. We don't do the bliss thing because we're just conventional and very responsible people, right? So we have to sometimes look deeper and get rid of our definitions of things to actually feel what is alive in our hearts. We have to be able to do that. Otherwise, we diminish what's already occurring. And it's not conventionally okay to feel bliss or joy or ecstasy in the face of someone dying. I know that, and I've said this in a retreat before that you were on, but being with a friend of Lotta and Floris's who's on the call now, And I saw her a couple of days before she died. And we just laughed. We had fun. We laughed. We were completely present together. It was completely joyful. Nobody could tell that she was actually in the dying process. You wouldn't have thought that, if you were listening from the outside, you would never have thought that. We could think that it was completely inappropriate, what we were talking about. Completely inappropriate. But it only from a conventional point of view. So you're very blessed to be with your friend, and I'm sure he's very blessed to have you there. What country are you in?
No, I'm in the USA.
Oh, you are, okay.
Well, thank you for all that. It was, like you said at the beginning, sometimes the conversation just seems so appropriate for the moment. And today's, was a bingo for me. So thank you.
I have a book on PDF. Pete's actually got it. I'll see if I can find it. He's away right now, but he'll be back on Tuesday. And it's called Easy Death. And it might be something good for you to read. I think it would really help, and maybe even help him.
Thanks. Look forward to it.
Okay. All right. So I think that we're 10 minutes over. So it's been very nice being with everyone. I hope that, there's a lot to talk about. And I wish we had more time because Albert brought up, just death, and death is really the biggest thing that, the fear of death is what most of us are avoiding. It's the biggest thing we want to avoid. But embracing death is freedom. Because even if you avoid it, it's still going to happen. Probably already knew that, but you don't, a lot of times it's not something people like to hear, but it's true. So I don't know what the topic of the next webinar is. I'll be really excited to find out.
It might be death.
Yeah, maybe it'll be death. See how many people we get to come on the death webinar. That'd be interesting. Maybe that's what we'll do. Let's talk about death next time. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it. Do people want to turn their cameras on for a moment and we can see each other?
No.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I guess the first Wednesday of next month we'll be doing this again. If you'd like to join us again, it would be very nice. And if I end up doing a New Year's retreat here in Portugal, we'll let you know. It should be another. I will have to decide in a week, so we'll see where that takes us, and we'll see where we go. But if I do it, I hope somebody comes. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Laura so she can say what she needs to say.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was, yeah, I'm quite blown away by this evening. So yes, the next webinar is the 4th of November. I will send out an email in the next couple of days with the recordings of this webinar, so you can share them with your friends or watch them again. And like Cynthia says, we'll keep you posted on the New Year's retreat and let you know as soon as we know. And just to remind you all that Cynthia does these webinars by donation, and I will include in the email ways you can donate if you feel the impulse. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Yes, I just want to.
Sorry.
We have an echo. Hang on a sec.
That's right.
I just want to point out to everyone, in case it's not obvious in your experience, but look at your experience right now. And here we are. We're all in different rooms, and some people are in the same room, but we're all in different rooms. We're on a screen. There is no separation. And there is only love. So I just wanted to point that out, that that's actually the case. And so if you're on a webinar, it might just feel kind of weird to acknowledge that you just feel a lot of love. So I just want to make it conscious that I feel like I love all of you. And it's very nice to spend the time with you. And I hope that we all just live a lot of radical responsibility in our everyday lives together, so that there can be more love and there can be more true relationship. And that's all in our hands. We can all decide to do that if you want to. So that's the end of the webinar. Yeah, Pedro.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Love you too, Cynthia.
Thank you,
So much.
Cynthia.
Love.
Love you. Love
Thank
you all.
you.
I love you
You,
very much.
Cynthia.
Thank you. Love you too.
Thank
Love you
you.
very much.
Everybody's very
Thank
happy.
you,
That's good.
Cynthia.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
For tonight.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you. Wish you really good continuing.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll be out, but never but never come off retreat. But at least talk to people. I always think I want to talk to people, and then I go back into the silence and I have no desire to talk to anybody.
Thank you. Hey, Quinta.
I just want to say something, you guys. Recognize the attraction where nobody, if you don't want to leave. You see, that's the heart attraction right there. That's the heart attraction to what's real and true. That's it right there.
Yes. Yes.
Nobody's rushing off to go do anything. Why? Is there anything more important than this?
No, not at all.
Of course, we are going to have to hang up sometime.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.
We miss you.
Yay.
I saw you walk by today, Rui.
What?
I saw you walk to the throne today.
Well, that's exciting.
Every time I go there, I think you are looking at me.
Well, I've only seen you once, so I don't know. I think you're probably going more often than I've seen you.
I don't know if you are in the balcony, watching the street.
So good to see you all.
You're going to be here soon, Rosella.
Yeah, on Monday.
Oh, on Monday. Monday coming.
Yeah, I'm coming. Yeah.
Wow. I'm glad I asked. Nobody tells me anything anymore. Sometimes I get mad because nobody tells me anything, and then I have to remember it's because they're not supposed to tell me anything.
So good to spend this time with you. Really, I miss you so much, but it really being here with you is perfect.
Yeah.
Even this little baby is so happy to see so many faces. Hi. So thank you, everybody. Have a nice night. Bye. Hello,
Bye.
Bernard. Salut, Bernard. À la prochaine.
Ciao. Ciao.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go. I'll see you guys.
Ciao.
Thank you,
Ciao.
Cynthia.
Bye. See you, Cynthia.
Bye bye.
Night.